And the voice you're hearing with mine is Erik Iverson, state GOP chair. Also a hard-working guy over at Denny Rehberg's office, too. Erik, let's talk about primaries here just a little bit. We're going to be going through some nationally here before very long. Some of them are just caucuses, some of them are actual primaries, but many of those the states hold those caucuses early in the year. Montana is not one of them. And it makes a difference on the campaign. Of course, one of the big differences is the fact we just have 3 electoral votes. But those 3 have elected people like Dick Cheney, George Bush, George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. There have been a number of candidates here. In fact, the Republican convention had Mitt Romney here. But having that primary so late in the year, what is it, June something or other, June 3rd, I think, but so late in the year, really puts us at a disadvantage, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Montana's getting left behind in this whole process, and now only South Dakota is the only state that's left like Montana, sort of way at the back of the line and having a primary that is essentially meaningless. And I say that the Montana presidential primary is meaningless for a couple of reasons. Number one, it does come in June, which is so late that historically every year somebody or the other has the nomination wrapped up by then, and everyone's expecting it with the front-loaded primary schedule this year to be decided by the middle of February. The second reason that the Montana primary is meaningless, particularly for Republicans, and I don't think a lot of people understand this, but when we send our 25 delegates to the National Convention, under current law, they aren't bound to vote for who wins in the Montana primary. So really our primary right now in Montana as it pertains to Republicans is basically just a presidential preference primary. There's nothing binding that says if, for instance, Rudy Giuliani were to win this primary in Montana in June, that all 25 of our delegates would have to go to Minneapolis and vote for Rudy Giuliani. So essentially right now we've got 25 Republicans in the state of Montana that decide for all of us who will get Montana's 25 votes at the National Convention. And I just think that's wrong. We need to include more people in the process, and for a couple of reasons. I happen to think that Denton is everybody as important as Des Moines, or that Colstrip shouldn't have to take a back seat to Concord, New Hampshire. We in Montana deserve to have our issues, the issues that we care about, considered by these presidential candidates, and the only way to do that is to become a part of the process. And we're being left behind. And if we don't stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, you need to pay attention to us out here in Montana. You need to pay attention to Western issues. You need to pay attention to issues that Republicans in Montana care about. These candidates aren't going to pay any attention. They're not going to come and visit Montana. They're not going to consider our ideas. And the only option we have is to move up in this schedule. And so that's what we've done. We've put a proposal. It's going to the state party's Rules Committee on Friday. Pending approval by the Rules Committee, it will go before the entire Republican State Central Committee, and that would allow us to hold a Republican presidential caucus. Some want to call it a straw poll. That's fine. On February 5th. What's unique about our proposal is it would make our 25 delegates to the National Convention bound to vote for on the first ballot whomever is decided at this caucus meeting on February 5th. Whoever is selected, our delegates are now bound to that person. They have to go in on the first ballot in Minneapolis, vote for whomever is elected in the Republican presidential caucus in Montana. Now, there's a couple exceptions to that. Obviously, if the candidate that the Montana Republicans choose dies between then and the convention, or if that candidate were to drop out of the race, or say we nominate somebody who ultimately isn't going to be the one that gets the nomination, the candidate that we nominate can release his delegates to another candidate with a letter in writing to the chairman of the Montana Republican Party that would allow that to happen. So there's several backstops to this in the event that circumstances change between whoever is nominated by the Republicans in Montana and what may be happening nationally at the time.
Well, that's the usual procedure in other states too.
Absolutely, and again, other states are doing this from Wyoming to California, all over the country. Other states are doing this, and we're getting left behind. And so I've been doing a lot of listening the last 5 weeks since I got elected chairman. And one of the things that people have told us to consider is doing this. And so I sat down with the staff there, and we kind of put a pencil to it, and we came up with this idea, and we've thrown it out there for discussion, and folks can tell us what they think. But in a larger sense, in Montana, we need to have this debate. And this sort of pushes the envelope. We need to have this larger discussion about whether or not a June primary makes sense. You know, there was legislation in the Montana legislature this last session that would have moved the primary from June to February 5th. It was supported by the governor. It was supported by the Secretary of State. It passed the House of Representatives in Montana, 76 to 24, bipartisan support, and it was tabled in committee by Senate Democrats. And it was over the cost. It would cost about $1 million to do this. And, you know, it's a matter of priorities, and if people in Montana say this isn't a priority, that's fine, but I think we need to have this discussion, because I think it's the right thing to do. We need to be a part of this process, and you can't expect to sit back and have the rest of the nation come to us on something like this. We have to stand up and say, okay, I want to be counted. I want to be a part of the process. I want to be a player. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the debate forward. We're trying to energize Republicans in Montana. We're trying to develop our grassroots through this, and we think it's an innovative way to do that.
The $1 million, of course, is what it's going to cost to set up polling stations, have inspectors there, and people taking registrations and so on. Mm-hmm. But is there not an additional cost to the parties in addition to that?
You know, if you were to move the entire primary, there would be a cost to the state of Montana. There may be some ancillary cost to the parties. Our caucus is really going to cost virtually nothing. I mean, we've said that, you know, we'll reimburse up to $500 per county, but, you know, really the only cost is going to be the paper ballots to print it on. Okay. We can do a lot of this communicating and about it over email, through conference calls, things like that, and the costs are very minimal, which is also, you know, an attractive feature of this plan. And again, you're going from 25 people under our current system in the Montana Republican Party. 25 people get to select who represents Montana Republicans at the national convention, who our choice is. We're saying 25 people is probably not the best way to do it. Let's open it up. We've now said, you know, there's 2,200 people that get to be a part of this process now, and we think this is a good first step to trying to bring some sanity to this process.
Those 2,200 people, they are members of individual central committees and executive committees and that sort of thing.
They're the rank and file elected officials in the Montana Republican Party, and they're accountable directly to the Republicans that elected them into those offices.
Erik, we're out of time this morning. I so appreciate you spending some time with me this morning. I kept you way longer than I said I would, and I apologize for that.
It's always a pleasure.
Well, I'll tell you, we got a lot of good information, and I certainly appreciate you.